Hey everyone! I've always been a huge fan of horror games.
But Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8, was boring to me.
Except when I'm not. Regardless, there's always been one set of horror games that I've always been a fan of. Five Nights at Freddy's.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to Five Nights at
Five Nights at Freddy's is an indie horror game series turned franchise made by indie developer Scott Cawthon on a software called Click Team. It was Scott's final attempt at being a game developer after his previous games were poorly received.
See, before game development, Scott was an animator for his own games and an animator for a Christian film studio. It was these passions that led Scott to create games such as The Desolate Hope and Chipper & Sons Lumber Co.
However, Chipper & Sons was rated very poorly when it was released. The beaver characters were described to be uncanny and creepy. And so Scott took this criticism and, after a lot of personal uncertainty, made a game that would make his small name known throughout the world.
After Chipper & Sons' poor reviews, Scott wanted to give everyone something that they would really be afraid of. A horror game. One that took away your ability to go anywhere, leaving you stuck in a dimly lit office as horrors slowly close in.
And so, Five Nights at Freddy's was born, taking the uncanny feeling of a classic pizza place and its animatronics, like Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza, and making them more horrifying as they move around at night. You play as Mike Schmidt, a night guard at said pizza place, armed with only a limited power system, a few cameras, and buttons to close the left or right doors and turn on the lights to the doors.
It was, admittedly, a simple premise. But despite how simple it was entirely new to the genre of horror. Normally, horror games would require you, the player, to make actions that end up witnessing the horror. You had to go down that dark alleyway. You had to make that step forward to get the jump scare. If you simply did nothing, nothing would happen. No scares, no horror, and the story would never progress. But FNAF twisted this premise. This time, the horror came to you.
Simply doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. You had to do something. If not, you'd get jump scared. But how exactly would you do these things? How would you keep the horrors out? Doors. Four animatronics are present: Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and the namesake, Freddy. All with slightly different ways of movement. In terms of AI, they're all the same, using movement counters that use the AI value of your character to see whether or not they would move, but each had a different way of getting to you.
Bonnie and Chica were basically the same. They'd slowly make their way to the office with different doors on either side being their corresponding doors. However, Foxy and Freddy both worked very differently compared to Bonnie and Chica.
Foxy was the only reason you had to check the cameras. Sure, you could use the cameras to find the location of the other animatronics, but it wasn't required. For Foxy, however, you had to check the cameras to keep him from attacking you. Freddy is almost the same as Chica, minus the fact that you can barely see him on the cameras. When Freddy's out, it's very difficult to see him, not to mention you couldn't even see him in the doors.
Freddy also had two ways of killing you. One, which was more common, was the power outage. If you ran out of power, the lights would completely shut off, and one of your doors would be illuminated by Freddy singing a melody before jump scaring you. The other was when if he made it to the door and you neglected to keep him out, he would obviously jump scare you.
And with that, FNAF was complete. It was Scott's final attempt at being a game developer. It was his last shot.
And oh boy, did it have a bang!
Finally, it was released on August 8th, 2014. It blew up. Everyone began playing it. Popular YouTubers like Markiplier, PewDiePie, everyone.
What especially helped was how new the game felt. It came out at a time where so many horror games were just the same over and over again. What also helped was the small amount of lore that Scott built into the games. Randomly, you could find newspaper clippings of murders happening at Freddy's, the phone guy, the player's guide, talking about a mysterious Byte of 87, and the occasional appearance of "It's me" flashing on the screen, and Golden Freddy. Also, weird dead kid moanings coming from the animatronics, but that's don't worry about that. Yeah.
It was this unknown lore that grew the fan base to an even larger extent. It wasn't just a bunch of people watching each other play the games, it was people trying to figure out the story of FNAF as a whole.
After seeing all of this praise, Scott knew what he had to do. Clearly, he still had it within him to make games, and good ones at that, well received. He had to make more. He had to make the fans happy, and he had to build on this loose story he had built in the first game. And so he made...
She is such a bad though. I hope they shot at that robot, man. I'm not even...
On November 10th, 2014, 3 months after the first game was released, with the community of theorists being a major part of the community now, Scott knew he had to expand more on the story of FNAF, while also expanding on the gameplay from the first game.
Scott already had the groundwork for the lore: Murder at Freddy's, Byte of 87, 5 Kids Missing, Golden Freddy, and several animatronics that went to kill the Night Guard, but I don't know why. In this game, Scott would introduce a killer in purple, more dead kids, and explain why the animatronics were killers.
There had already been a theory that the missing kids mentioned in the first game had been stuffed inside of the animatronics. I mean, it made sense. You had 5 kids and 5 animatronics, one of which being a secret one that very few people ended up seeing. Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, Foxy, and of course, Golden Freddy. Not to mention the whimpering and moans coming from the animatronics when they would move around or be right at your doors. And so Scott took this idea and built onto it with the 8-bit minigames within FNAF 2.
FNAF 2 introduced the main way of storytelling, with small, Atari-style 8-bit minigames that added to the lore. Save Them, Foxy Go Go Go, Give Gifts, Give Life, and Take Cake to the Children. Save Them allowed the player to follow the Puppet, a new character in FNAF 2, around the FNAF 2 pizza place, with a rare chance to see Golden Freddy, as well as the new Purple Guy character. Through the pizza place, the player would find several dead bodies in gray. Give Gifts, Give Life has the puppet place animatronic heads on the gray dead bodies. Foxy Go 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 has the player take control of Foxy as he runs from the stage and finds kids. On a later attempt, the player will find Purple Guy again, smiling, as 5 gray dead bodies replace the happy children. And Take Cake to the Children has the player walk around a small room as Freddy, as a child is murdered outside the room by said Purple Guy. It was these games that helped flesh out the story. That Purple Guy was the killer.
That's why I never trust grapes.
At least 5 children had been killed, and were given a second life in the animatronics through the puppets.
But what about the gameplay?
I'm glad you asked. Scott had to do something different with the games. More animatronic threats, new game mechanics, and more ways for the animatronics to get in. So, Scott added and removed.
No doors, 2 types of animatronics, a character that stole your power, a camera that required you to use your flashlight, a character that required you to use the cameras, and a mask.
First, the office. As mentioned, there were no doors to keep the horrors out. The office was a lot more spacious, with 2 comedically large vents on the walls and a large entrance way in the front. The player was equipped only with flashlights that they could use for the hallway and the vents. And that was it. Next, the animatronics. The first type are the toy versions of the animatronics. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, and Toy...
Mangle. The remains of Toy Foxy.
Balloon Boy, and the Puppet. Both Toy Chica and Toy Bonnie work the same as they did in FNAF 1. Toy Chica makes her way towards the office and appears in the left vent. Toy Bonnie does the same with the right vent. Toy Freddy simply makes his way down the main hallway. All 3 can be warded off using the player's mask. Balloon Boy makes his way towards the office through the left vent. If he gets into your office, he removes the player's ability to use the flashlight for a period of time. How do you get rid of him?
Mask.
Mangle travels into the office through the right vent with garbled radio sound when they get close. If they get into the office, they will hang from the ceiling and randomly kill the player. How do you get rid of him?
Mask.
The Puppet is the only animatronic that works slightly different. On camera 7, the player will find the prize corner with the option to wind a music box. If the music box ever runs out, the Puppet will quickly make their way to the office and jump scare the player.
There was only one reason to ever use the camera, similar to Foxy in FNAF 1.
There's also a second type of animatronic, the Withered animatronics. Withered Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, all with amazing designs, much freakier and uncanny compared to the toys and animatronics. However, all the withers can be warded off the same way.
Mask.
Except for Foxy. To keep him away, you have to flash your flashlight down the main hall.
And that's all the characters. Except for the secret ones.
Like Golden Freddy in FNAF 1, there are 3 other characters that have a chance to show up any night. Golden Freddy makes a return with a wither design, as well as 2 Shadow animatronics, Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy. Shadow Freddy has a chance to appear when the wither animatronics leave the starting room, and Shadow Bonnie, aka RWQFSFASXC, can randomly appear in the office and crash your game.
And that's it. That's the gameplay. Now on to...
Hey, Shinji, do you know Springtrap?
I don't understand.
Five Nights at Freddy's 3.
Scott had reached a point in FNAF where he didn't want to keep making FNAF games anymore. He wanted to go back to his simple life and making games for himself, his kids, and his community. He had already gotten enough money, so he just had to end it with one final game.
Scott still had to keep things fresh with the 3rd installment. Plus, FNAF 2 was a prequel. Sure, Scott could go even further back after Phone Guy mentioned Fredbear's Family Diner, but what if the next game played into the horror and the lore with a haunted house?
Fazbear Frights, a horror attraction based off of the horror of the lore of the series. A mysterious purple figure, haunted robots, and dead kids. And best of all, the people running the attraction found a real animatronic, a ruined Bonnie animatronic.
The gameplay doesn't change much. Now you're in a very green office with a vent and a door entrance. With you are a camera system and audio lures, alongside a vent system that can be closed. You have a maintenance panel, which is your way to refill your audio lures, fix faulty cameras, and reset ventilation when it goes out.
Welcome to your job. Here's some audio, the cameras fail occasionally, and the ventilation, sometimes cuts out, so you might not be able to breathe sometime. Have fun!
As for the animatronics, there's only one, technically. The ruined Bonnie. It slowly makes its way to the office through the vents and carefully hiding from cameras, while still being somewhat visible. The ruined Bonnie's actions are almost human-like, less than that of a regular animatronic.
In the attraction, there were also a lot of ghosts and phantoms. The phantom animatronics. Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Balloon Boy, Mangle, and the puppet all make a reappearance in burnt, moldy green forms. Each has a different way of appearing, though.
Freddy will walk across the window of your office. If you look at him for too long, he will duck down and disappear and jump scare you shortly after. Foxy will randomly show up in the corner of your office. If you look at him for too long, he'll jump scare you. Chica will appear on the cameras inside of an arcade machine. If you stare at her for too long, she'll disappear and jump scare you. Balloon Boy will randomly appear on any camera. Staring at him for too long will result in a jump scare.
Although all these animatronics can jump scare you, with a few exceptions, none of them actually kill you like in past games. Instead, they affect your maintenance, causing you to spend precious time away from the cameras to reset ventilation, cameras, and audio.
There are only 2 phantom animatronics that don't jump scare you, Mangle and the puppet. Mangle will randomly appear on the cameras. Staring at them for too long will cause them to make a loud, garbled radio noise. Annoying? Yes, but it doesn't take away from too much compared to the puppet. If you find the puppet standing on camera 8, don't look for too long. Staring at it will cause it to flip down your camera as it blocks your vision, playing a jarring noise that keeps you from opening any panel or doing anything.
But there's still one animatronic that could actually kill you. The ruined Bonnie. You can of course use audio lures to lure him away, or close the vents to, lock him out from the vents. And that's it for gameplay. The only thing that's missing is the post-night 8-bit minigames.
After every night, the player will find themselves controlling one of the 4 original animatronics at the first FNAF location. Each night, an animatronic follows Shadow Freddy into the back rooms, where the animatronic is deconstructed by the one, the only,
Purple Guy!
On the 5th night, however, the player takes control of a grayed-out crying child as it makes its way to the back room, finding the purple guy trapped by 4 other grayed-out children with a golden bodysuit laying in the ground. After chasing the purple guy, he will run into the golden bodysuit, putting it on, before being crushed inside and bleeding out. See, throughout the game, we've been presented with these old training calls from Phone Guy. In there, he mentions spring lock suits that can turn from both animatronic and costume by pulling the animatronic parts to the side when in costume mode using springs that, well, lock. However, if moisture is present in the suits, the spring locks will snap and move all the animatronic parts back into position for the robots. But after a spring lock failure at a sister location, the suits were to be locked up and shut away permanently. As you could assume, the Golden Bonnie suit that Purple Guy put on was a spring lock suit, which snapped shut onto the Purple Guy. However, the Purple Guy managed to survive the spring lock failure and is now trapped in the ruined Bonnie suit, which is now called Springtrap.
And that was it. The killer was trapped. And after night 5, it was revealed that Fazbear Frights burned down with Springtrap inside. The Purple Man was finally dead. But since it was Scott's last game, he had to include a good ending.
By completing small 8-bit minigames within the nights, BB's Air Adventure, Mangle's Quest, Chica's Party World, Stage 01, and Glitch, finding all of the kids and giving them cake, you unlock a secret 6th minigame, Happiest Day. The puppet makes their way to the front of a birthday party, finding 5 kids, 4 wearing the original animatronic masks. Upon placing down the final cake, the last of the 5 kids puts on a Golden Freddy mask before they disappear as their masks fall and the balloons fly up.
The spirits were free. The killer was burnt. And we got to learn a little bit about Fredbear's Family Diner with the Stage 01 minigame. In the minigame, we got to see Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie performing on stage together, both as Springlock suits. So that's why Golden Freddy was never able to move, because he was a Springlock. He wasn't in his animatronic state, he was in his costume state. Golden Freddy was Fredbear. And finally, we had all the answers we've been looking for. And the series could finally end. Thank you, Scott.
But some people didn't like the gameplay and jump scares, so Scott made...
Is that the Byte of 87?
I think it's about time I finally reset the power. So, here we go. So I'm gonna prop myself on this door. No reason, just felt like it.
Five Nights at Freddy's 4, also known as the final chapter. Everyone was gearing up for the true ending to FNAF. As Scott released teasers of Nightmare animatronics, fans were ecstatic. The new animatronics looked so much more horrifying and violent. With their torn metal and sharp teeth, all fans had to do was wait until Halloween of 2015. Sure, the game would take longer to release, but the wait would have to be absolutely worth it. It was released 4 months earlier, on July 23rd. As for the gameplay, it was nearly identical to FNAF 1. You play as a small child whose identity is debatable.
We'll get to that later.
The player, as a small child, must fend off the original 4 animatronics in their nightmare forms, using flashlights and doors that refuse to stay closed.
These things close?
4 areas are present in the bedroom: the bed, 2 doors, and a closet that the player can move to, making it the first game where the player isn't completely stationary. Both doors work the same as they did in FNAF 1. Nightmare Bonnie and Nightmare Chica will both make their way to your room. Nightmare Bonnie will appear on the left, Nightmare Chica will appear on the right. Behind you is the bed. There, small Nightmare Freddys called Freddles will spawn. By shining your light at them, they will disappear, keeping Nightmare Freddy at bay. And then there's Nightmare Foxy. If you don't check the correct door he's at with your flashlight, he will move into your closet for the rest of the night. There, he will have a few stages before he attacks. All you really need to do is chalk on him from time to time and make sure he doesn't attack you. But here's the funny part. On his last stage before he attacks you, if you go there, he will have his head slightly poking out. And if you shine your light, there's a loud roar noise that he makes, and it scares the absolute hell out of me. Oh my god, watch the stream because it is funny.
And that's it. Except for 2 other animatronics, Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear.
Both work the exact same as the previous mentioned nightmares. Only difference is that their speed and how they work like Freddy and Foxy. If you choose the wrong door to check, they will play a laughing sound as they appear either on your bed like Freddy or in your closet like Foxy. From there, you just need to find them, get rid of them, and continue on. But wait a second, Nightmare Fredbear looks a lot like Golden Freddy. And we just talked about that chances are Golden Freddy was Fredbear.
Between each night, the player gets to play 2 minigames. An 8-bit minigame where they go around their neighborhood or go to Fredbear's or whatever, or a fun with plush trap minigame that, if they're successful on getting plush trap onto the white X in the amount of time that they're given, they will advance 2 hours into the next night.
In the 8-bit minigames, you play as a crying child as he makes his way through the week leading up to his birthday. In the first minigame, he's trapped in his bedroom. In the second, he walks around the house until a kid in a foxy mask, presumably his brother, scares him. There's also a girl's room with her disassembled mangle. In the third, the crying child is abandoned at Fredbear's family diner. It is revealed that he's afraid of the animatronics as one in a Springlock Fredbear costume approaches him and he cries. There's also an Easter egg where you can see a purple guy helping someone put on a spring bunny suit. So, In the fourth minigame, the crying child walks home from Fredbear's, meeting a kid along the way. One talks about her finger trap plush trap, another makes fun of his fears of the animatronic, the third talks about how animatronics come to life at night and that they'll hide your body if they get you. A fourth child has toy versions of the classic animatronics, minus Foxy, with Toy Chica missing her beak. And the final child holding a balloon. When the crying child gets home, he can turn on the TV which reads 1983 before getting jump scared by a child in the foxy mask. In the fourth minigame, the crying child is locked in the parts and service room as he cries.
And finally, the fifth minigame. The crying child's birthday is finally here. The party is finally here. And instead, what we end up seeing is the crying child getting mocked by a bunch of older kids wearing the original FNAF mascot costumes as they're mocking him for his fear of the animatronics before they lift him up, carry him to Fredbear, place him inside Fredbear's mouth, and, well...
Hey guys, I think the little man said he wants to give Fredbear a big kiss. On 3, 1, 2... Was that the Bite of 87?
So, that was it. That was the story of Five Nights at Freddy's. We had the answer to the Bite of 87, the thing that started the entire lore debate of the series. We had the murderer, the purple guy, now burnt to a crisp. Everything had ended. Yeah?
Hey, idiot. You forgot something?
Who are you?
Your guilty conscience. Here to explain how you're wrong. See, in FNAF 3, by beating Night 6, the player is presented with a newspaper clipping. But by lighting up the clipping, you can find Springtrap in the background. Moreover, FNAF 4 also shows the copyright date on the TV to be 1983, meaning it's the Bite of 83, not 87. Also, there's several secrets within FNAF 4 that make the games technically a dream.
How?
Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy are both shadows on the wall in Fredbear's. The crying child's foxy plush has its head ripped off, which is why it's out of order in FNAF 1. Mangle is found in the crying child's sister's room, torn apart. Toy Chica is missing her beak when the crying child walks home before night 4. Springtrap is just a Spring Bonnie finger trap. Purple Guy isn't hiding bodies in animatronics, he's just helping employees put on the Springlock suits. Golden Freddy is just Fredbear. And, most compelling of all nights before FNAF 4 end with a grandfather clock. The same clock the crying child has outside of his room. So, what do you think of that, mate?
I think you forgot one more thing.
What?
The best FNAF game. FNAF World.
No.
With the Five Nights at Freddy's series finished, Scott wanted to take a step back and make games like some of his past games, an RPG. But Scott wanted to add FNAF characters to appease fans, Thus, FNAF World was made, a brand new take on FNAF, within a turn-based RPG formula with fully 3D graphics, including fully 3D overworld, and... never mind.
The game came out in a horrible state, far from what fans were told or even expected. The game was entirely incomplete with weird transitions from the 2D overworld to 3D fights and character select. To say the game was poorly received would be an absolute understatement. Fans just tore it apart.
No one was expecting a FNAF RPG. When it was first announced, there was a mass fan outcry, yet some fans were still hopeful that the game was a fake out. But when the game was released on January 21st, 2016, fans were treated to a rushed, unfinished, unpolished, convoluted game, even still after several updates, causing there to finally be fully 3D graphics all throughout the world, and generally better gameplay. A lot of it is still very convoluted, requiring players to no-clip through scenery without any hints.
This isn't horror water, this is unfinished RPG water!
However, in more recent times, FNAF World has gained a cult following within the community, with the changes to gameplay with fully 3D graphics, Halloween update adding more characters and minigames, and popular streamers replaying it such as Astral Smith and David Baring, giving it new life.
But with Scott expanding on the games with an RPG, alongside fans being unhappy with the idea that all the games were just a dream, Scott needed to expand even more with the lore, the series, and money. With the books.